a good idea about the perception process at this point, and you've learned some of the factors, especially with perceiving other people, our perceptions are not always accurate, nor are they always correct. So let's work on some skills that we can use. We're going to put these in our tool belt so that we can become better communicators. So I do call them skills or tools, right, that you put in your tool belt. The tools are never a guarantee. We pick and choose what we want to try in any given situation, and they might work well and they might not, but we're equipped. A friendly reminder, anytime I have a video posted in my PowerPoints, you can't open it and play it from the video. I have this PowerPoint posted in your weekly folders, and you can actually access the video directly from that PowerPoint. So all my video hyperlinks are playable from the PowerPoint directly. So here's a list of things that you can work on for getting better at your perception skills. Verifying them, be more thoughtful when you're seeking explanations, looking past or beyond those first impressions. You've learned about mindlessness and selective perception, so we want to be more mindful. You can read about that in this chapter. Reframing is looking at it from something from another person's perspective or their frame of reference, back in our first chapter, frame of reference. And here in this video, I'm going to walk you through these two skills, the perception check and pillow method. Great skills. I love these. They're some of my favorites. I'll tell you how they're helpful and how to use them. So the first one you see right over here on the right of your screen, the pillow method, this is not in your textbook. This is something we would normally teach in our interpersonal class. But I love this skill. I think it's fabulous. It's especially good in conflict situations, whether it's interpersonal, you're having an argument with a friend, family member, coworker, or if it's politics, or we're discussing controversial issues. Pillow method is a great tool. It's challenging though. There are parts of this you won't like. The first thing to do is this is a pillow, and there's 4 sides. So let's look at the top center. Position number 1. I know it's pixelated, but it's the best image I could find. Position number 1, I'm right and you're wrong. That's our favorite one, isn't it? But that's not always true, is it? If we really want to be honest, and hard to admit, we are not always right, right? But that's our first train of thought, right? So let's look at another perspective. Let's move down to the bottom center, position number 2. Let's look at, how is the other person right? And I'm wrong. That one's tough. Change your perspective. How is the other person right? How could I be wrong? It's challenging, but it's good for you, just like your vegetables. And there's our bird chiming in. He agrees. It is a challenge. All right, let's look at our third position on the pillow. Right, position number 3 on the left. Maybe you're both right and you're both wrong. Consider that. Make a list. How are you both right? How are you right? How am I right? How are you wrong? How am I wrong? Right? And you can do it as a matter of fact. You can do this as a discussion. And position number 4, maybe this issue isn't that important. Sometimes we make mountains out of molehills, if you've ever heard that expression. It seems bigger than it actually is. It's not always the case. Sometimes things are crucial, but it's something to consider. And position 5, in the center, maybe there's truth in all these perspectives. There probably is. So the challenge is taking the time, walking through this method, and get a different perspective. Okay? That's one of your tools in your tool belt, along with all the others itemized here on the left. Let's look at perception checking. It's a little more detailed, and this is actually a skill. You can just think through this if you'd like, but this is actually a skill that teaches you how to actually confront somebody and figure out what to say. It's your 1, 2, 3. Here's what to say to the person that you have to confront. So if you tend to make assumptions or if you've been inaccurate in your interpretations, you want to be better at your perceptions, this is a way to check them, right? If you have to bring up an uncomfortable topic or a sticky subject, this is a good skill to confront somebody with. So with a perception check, there are 3 different parts to this skill. There's the behavior, and that is, what did they say or do that's causing you concern or confusion, right? If we're concerned and we want explanation, what happened? But make sure you're tangible. It has to be something that we heard or that we saw. Okay, that's really important, and I'll give you an example of how we don't do this correctly here in just a moment, right? And so back to our attributions, we're trying to attach meaning to that behavior. What do you think's going on here? What are your interpretations, your first impressions of their behavior? What do you think is going on here? You might have a gut instinct of what's going on, and that's a good thing. We want to consider that. But it would be a good idea to brainstorm as many possibilities, right? To kind of think through, what are the different possibilities here? Like bombing that exam. What are all the possibilities? Why did your friend bomb the exam? Maybe they were sick. Maybe they didn't get to study. Maybe they had technical issues, right? Maybe their mirror did break. They had bad luck. Maybe it was difficult, right? There's lots of possibilities. And so when you can brainstorm those and pick the best 2, this will be a more effective skill. Okay. Here's what happens though. Sometimes when you're stating your interpretations, they are not the facts. The facts are the behavior. This is just what you think it means. And so what happens is sometimes people will actually state an interpretation, but they state it as a behavior. Like, you're mad at me. Well, you just accused somebody of something. Mad is not a behavior. Mad is an interpretation. What did it look like? What did they say or do that made you think that they're mad? Right? Did their eyes roll? Did they turn red? Did their volume increase? Were they yelling? Did they slam the door? Those are behaviors. Mad is your interpretation of the behavior. So the behavior has to be something that we see or hear. And then you want to make sure that when you're presenting these interpretations, these are your thoughts. So you want to write them as a statement, not a question. And you want to make sure one is nice. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Because you're confronting them, it's important to do that. And you present these ideas as your thoughts, and then you ask for them to clarify. You're basically asking for feedback. You want to have an open-ended question, not a closed-ended. Closed-ended questions are like the yes or no answers. And like, which is it? It shouldn't be tied to the interpretations, just a general open-ended question for clarification. So let's look at how this might sound. Right? Let's set a scenario. Let's say Chad is your roommate or your family member, right, in your household, and last night y'all had this huge fight, right? It did not go well. You went to bed angry. You got up the next morning, you had breakfast, you left, you've been at school, you've been at work, you come home, you haven't seen Chad yet, and you're hearing a lot of noise in the kitchen. Oh my goodness. So why is there noise in the kitchen? My gut might tell me, oh, he's still mad about last night. Okay, here's where I brainstorm. What are the possibilities? Why is there noise in the kitchen? Oh, maybe he is mad. Okay, that's a possibility, right? He's still upset. Maybe he's in a rush to get dinner ready. Maybe the pans are all falling out of the cabinet. That happens to me with the lids, right? And it makes a lot of noise, right? So those are some other reasons why there might be noise in the kitchen. And so we don't want to jump to conclusions, We're checking our assumptions or our perceptions here and thinking through the possibilities. So we might say, hey, Chad, hey, boy, there's a lot of noise going on here around in the kitchen. At first I thought maybe you're just in a rush to get dinner ready, but I did think that maybe you're still mad about last night. What's going on? That allows them to think through the behavior that you're referencing, considering your thoughts and your interpretations, and answering the question. Well, yeah, I am really in a rush to get dinner ready. Right? I'm not really mad about last night, or yeah, I'm still mad about last night. And then you can continue the conversation from there. If you just go to them and say, hey, you're still mad at last night, you're being accusatory. That's an assumption on your part. And so that's not checking your perspective, right? This is what we would call a full perception check. You certainly can abbreviate it. Like your friend maybe didn't show up for lunch. Hey, you were supposed to meet for lunch. What happened? You could just jump from the behavior to the request for clarification. But sometimes, especially with sensitive topics, complex issues, things like that, you would want to walk through this. Present the behavior. That's not really arguable. It's a fact. Your interpretations are basically your perspectives, your opinions about it. Those are negotiable, right? You could be wrong. And then asking for a discussion with an open-ended question. Great approach. It's softer. Instead of just coming at somebody, right in front of their face, this is like coming next to them, side by side. It's a softer way to confront, because most of us, we get pretty defensive when we're confronted, right? And so this is just a softer approach. You could just be thinking through this as a way to check your assumptions before you communicate with others, but it's a great skill. And last in this chapter on perception as far as relating to other people is empathy and sympathy. So you can learn a little bit more about that. As I said, this chapter has a lot of meat to it, and there's a lot of details. The last video I have is about you, perception and yourself, how you view yourself. And it requires you to be a little introspective, which can be uncomfortable, but it's good for you. Well, let's dive into that, our last video for this chapter on perception of self.